They weren't just admired. They were engineered to be unforgettable. But what if Hollywood's most iconic curves weren't entirely natural, or entirely their choice? Behind the spotlight, these women became symbols of desire, shaped by studios that understood one thing: beauty sells, but illusion sells even more. Tonight, we're uncovering the 15 curviest stars of old Hollywood, the faces you remember, and the hidden truths you probably don't. Because one of them wasn't supposed to look this way at all. Veronica Lake, 1942. The image feels smaller than expected. Not towering, not overwhelming, but controlled. Veronica Lake didn't dominate the screen with exaggerated curves. She did something more precise. Her figure was compact, balanced, almost engineered to fit perfectly within the frame. And in tight dresses and shadow-heavy lighting, her silhouette became sharper, more defined. Hollywood didn't present her as bold. It presented her as controlled mystery. The famous peekaboo hair covered one eye, but it also directed attention downward, subtly guiding how audiences saw her entire form. There was a quiet calculation in it. Not louder, not bigger, just exact. And in an era chasing spectacle, that restraint made her unforgettable. Jane Russell, 1943. Before the audience even understood what they were looking at, the studio already did. Jane Russell wasn't just introduced to Hollywood. She was launched, carefully, deliberately. Her debut in The Outlaw wasn't built around story. It was built around image. Costumes were designed to emphasize her figure in ways audiences hadn't quite seen before. Posters lingered on shape rather than narrative. Even camera angles felt intentional, guiding attention without ever stating it outright. And it worked. The image caught on immediately. Audiences responded before they even fully understood why. But beneath that success was a shift. Hollywood wasn't just capturing beauty anymore. It was beginning to construct it, refine it, control it, repeat it. And Russell became one of the earliest examples of that change. A blueprint for how image could lead, and everything else could follow. Dorothy Dandridge, 1954. There's a difference between being seen and being framed. Dorothy Dandridge carried her curves differently, not exaggerated, not stylized. Her presence felt natural, grounded in movement, in expression, in quiet control. But the way she was filmed elevated that presence, turning something real into something almost untouchable. In Carmen Jones, the camera doesn't rush past her. It pauses, it lingers. It follows her silhouette as if it understands that presence takes time to register. Every movement feels deliberate, every frame balanced to hold attention just a little longer. But behind that, elegance was limitation. Roles were restricted, opportunities carefully controlled. The industry recognized her image, but not her full range. And that creates a tension you can still feel, because what's being celebrated on screen isn't fully supported behind it. Her image was admired, but her freedom was limited. And that contrast doesn't disappear. It stays in the performance. Jayne Mansfield, 1957. This is where subtlety disappears. Jayne Mansfield wasn't presented as natural. She was presented as impossible. From the beginning, every detail of her image leaned toward exaggeration. Wardrobe designed to emphasize shape, posture carefully directed, lighting adjusted to heighten contrast. Nothing was accidental. Her figure wasn't just highlighted. It became the center of everything. Scenes paused around it. Publicity focused on it. Headlines repeated it. The image didn't support her career. It defined it. And for a while, it worked. But then something shifted. The more exaggerated the image became, the harder it was to separate from the person behind it. Because now, the audience wasn't just watching her. They were watching what she represented. An idea, a symbol, a spectacle. And once that transformation happens, control begins to fade. Subtle choices matter less. The personal identity becomes harder to maintain, because the image takes priority. And when that happens, It doesn't stay contained. It follows everywhere. Anita Ekberg, 1960. The moment feels effortless, almost accidental, but it wasn't. Anita Ekberg standing in the Trevi Fountain became one of cinema's most recognizable images. The dress, the movement, the presence. It looked natural, but it was constructed down to the smallest detail. Lighting softened edges. Water reflected shape. Movement slowed perception. The result wasn't just beauty. It was immersion. For a moment, the audience didn't feel like they were watching a performance. They felt like they were witnessing something real. And that illusion made it iconic. Gina Lollobrigida, 1953. Before Hollywood could define beauty globally, someone else already had. Gina Lollobrigida didn't follow the Hollywood formula. She expanded it. Her presence didn't feel manufactured or carefully measured against studio expectations. Instead, it carried a kind of natural authority, something that didn't need adjustment to be noticed. Her curves weren't exaggerated for spectacle. They existed as part of a complete image, confident, grounded, and almost untouchable. The camera didn't reshape her. It adapted to her. Lighting softened around her rather than defining her. Framing followed her movement instead of controlling it. And when she stepped into international cinema, something shifted. Audiences weren't just watching another star. They were experiencing a different standard entirely. One that didn't rely on the same formulas Hollywood had been perfecting. Comparisons started to fade, because now there was contrast. And in that contrast, a quiet realization formed. Beauty didn't have to look one way. It never did. Sophia Loren, 1958. Strength changes everything. Sophia Loren didn't rely on softness to define her presence. Her curves carried weight, physical, emotional, undeniable, and that weight changed how she was seen on screen. There was no sense of hesitation in her movement, no subtle adjustment to meet expectations. Everything felt direct, intentional, certain, and the camera responded to that certainty. It didn't attempt to reshape her or guide her into a predefined image. It followed her, framing adjusted, movement aligned. The performance dictated the visual, not the other way around. That reversal mattered more than it seemed. Because for so long, Hollywood had controlled how beauty was presented, refined, softened, carefully constructed. But here, something shifted. The image wasn't being imposed. It was being expressed. And that difference created a new kind of presence. One that didn't ask for approval or permission. It simply existed, fully formed. For once, the system wasn't leading. It was responding. Kim Novak, 1958. Stillness can be more revealing than movement. Kim Novak didn't project her curves outward. She allowed them to exist quietly, almost hidden beneath soft fabrics and controlled posture. In Vertigo, her presence feels distant, carefully composed, almost unreachable. The wardrobe matters here. Structured suits, clean lines, nothing exaggerated. And the silhouette still forms beneath it, subtle but undeniable. That contrast is what holds attention. Covered, but visible. Restrained, but present. Hollywood didn't push her into the traditional bombshell mold. Instead, it reframed her as something more elusive. A figure you don't immediately understand, but keep watching anyway. And that uncertainty becomes the hook. Because the audience isn't just observing her appearance. They're trying to figure it out. Where does the illusion end? Where does the real person begin? The film never answers that clearly. And maybe that's the point, because sometimes what's withheld creates more tension than what's revealed. Ava Gardner, 1946. There's nothing forced about it. No visible construction, no obvious design. Ava Gardner carried her curves in a way that felt almost accidental, like they weren't meant to be the focus, yet somehow became it anyway. In films like The Killers, the camera doesn't exaggerate her form. It observes it. Soft lighting, minimal movement, controlled framing. Nothing feels overstated. And yet, you notice. That's where the power is. Because when something isn't being pushed towards you, you lean in closer. Gardner's presence didn't rely on manipulation. It relied on balance. Every line of her silhouette felt natural, unforced, almost untouched by the heavy styling that defined so many others of the era. But even that natural image raises a question. How much of it was truly untouched? And how much was simply designed to look that way? Hollywood was evolving at this point, learning that subtlety could be just as effective as spectacle. And Gardner became proof. Because sometimes, the most convincing illusion is the one that doesn't look like an illusion at all. Rita Hayworth, 1946. At first, it looks effortless. Rita Hayworth steps into frame in Gilda, and the entire atmosphere shifts. The black dress, the movement, the slow, deliberate way she removes the glove. It feels natural, smooth, unforced. But nothing about it is accidental. Every motion is calculated, every pause measured. The dress isn't just wardrobe, it's structure. It defines her silhouette, sharpens it, controls how the audience sees it from every angle. And the lighting does the rest. Soft highlights, deep shadows, carefully placed contrast. Her curves aren't just visible, they're sculpted by the frame itself. That's what made Hayworth different. She wasn't just presented as beautiful, she was constructed as iconic. During World War II, her image became one of the most widely distributed pinups among soldiers. Not just because of how she looked, but because of how precisely that image had been built. But here's the tension. The more perfect the image became, the further it moved from reality. And somewhere between performance and perception, Rita Hayworth stopped being just a person and became something else entirely. An idea. Lana Turner, 1937. It started with a sweater, not a performance, not a role, just a look. Lana Turner was discovered in a way that already hinted at what Hollywood saw first. Not talent, not range, shape. The nickname Sweater Girl didn't come from a film. It came from how her body translated through fabric, how it created an outline that the camera immediately understood. Studios moved quickly. Wardrobes tightened, lighting softened, angles adjusted. And just like that, the image was defined. But something about it feels slightly detached, because when a star is introduced through appearance first, everything else becomes secondary. Roles begin to orbit the image. Scenes are designed to maintain it. Even movement becomes controlled, limited to what preserves the illusion. Turner adapted. She had to. But the question lingers beneath it all. Was she shaping the image, or was the image shaping her? Because once Hollywood locks onto a silhouette, it doesn't easily let go. Elizabeth Taylor, 1951. At first, it wasn't about curves at all. Elizabeth Taylor entered Hollywood as something else entirely. Youthful, delicate, almost untouched by the system's expectations. But over time, something shifted. Her image matured, slowly, gradually, and with it, her figure became more defined, more present within the frame. Not exaggerated like Mansfield, not constructed like Russell, but unmistakably there. What made Taylor different wasn't just how she looked, it was how the camera responded to her. It lingered longer, framed tighter, allowed stillness to carry weight. Her curves weren't pushed forward, they were revealed over time. And that evolution created a different kind of tension. Because the audience wasn't just seeing a finished image, they were watching it form in real time. But behind that transformation was something less visible. Studio pressure, public expectation, constant scrutiny. The more her image developed, the more it became something to maintain, to protect, to preserve. And eventually, it stopped being about discovery. It became about consistency, keeping the image exactly where the world expected it to be. Mae West, 1933. Before Hollywood perfected the illusion, she understood it. Mae West didn't wait for the industry to define her image. She arrived with it already in place. Controlled, intentional, unapologetic. Her curves weren't something the studio discovered. They were something she used. Every movement, every line of dialogue, every pause, it all worked together. The body wasn't separate from the performance. It was the performance. And that changed everything. Because for the first time, the audience wasn't just reacting to what they saw. They were reacting to how confidently it was being presented. There was no illusion of innocence, no attempt to soften the image. It was direct, aware, almost confrontational. But that control came with consequences. Censorship tightened, studios pushed back. The industry wasn't ready for someone who understood exactly how the system worked and refused to play along quietly. So the image had to be contained, adjusted, restricted. But even then, it didn't disappear. Because once an audience sees confidence presented, that clearly, it's impossible to fully erase it. Marilyn Monroe, 1953. This is the image everyone remembers. Marilyn Monroe standing over the subway grate, the white dress lifting, the moment frozen in time. It feels spontaneous, almost accidental. No, but it wasn't. Every detail was constructed. The fabric, the timing, the camera placement. Even the expression, carefully balanced between surprise and control. Monroe's figure became the standard, the reference point, the definition of what Hollywood would call perfect. But perfection, in this case, required maintenance, constant adjustment, relentless pressure. Her image wasn't just admired, it was expected. And expectations don't leave room for variation. Behind the scenes, that created a different kind of tension. One the audience rarely saw. Because the more iconic the image became, the less space there was to exist outside of it. She wasn't just performing roles anymore. She was performing herself. And over time, that line between identity and image began to blur. Betty Grable, 1943. The image didn't move. It didn't need to. Betty Grable turned slightly away from the camera, looking back over her shoulder. A simple pose, no motion, no performance. And yet, it became one of the most reproduced images of the entire era. Millions of copies, sent overseas, carried by soldiers, pinned to walls. Not because it was complex, but because it was clear. The silhouette was unmistakable. Clean lines, balanced proportions. Nothing exaggerated, nothing hidden. Just a direct presentation of form. Hollywood understood exactly what it had. That image wasn't just publicity. It was strategy. Because during wartime, morale mattered. And Grable's image became part of that system, carefully distributed, widely circulated, intentionally preserved. But here's where it shifts. The image stayed the same, even as everything else changed. No variation, no reinterpretation, just repetition. And over time, that repetition turned a person into something else. A symbol, not evolving, not changing, just existing exactly as remembered. Because once an image reaches that level of recognition, it stops belonging to the person in it and starts belonging to everyone else. They weren't just stars. They were images, shaped, refined, and remembered long after the camera stopped. But now you've seen what was behind them. So the question stays with you. How much of it was real, and how much was designed for you to believe it was? Because once you notice it, you can't unsee it.